So, a blonde and a brunette decide to take a day off together at the local lake. Finding themselves alone, they opt for some spontaneous skinny dipping to enjoy the fantastic weather. After about 30 minutes of carefree splashing around, they feel it's time to call it quits. However, just as they emerge from the water, two buses pull up right in front of them. To their utter shock, the buses are filled with men from their local church, the very church they both attend. With no place to hide and their clothes just out of reach, panic sets in. The blonde frantically tries to cover herself and makes a run for cover, while the brunette, choosing a different approach, covers her face and chases after the blonde. Once out of sight, the blonde, still in shock, says, "How on earth will you face those churchmen now? You didn't even make an effort to cover up." The brunette calmly responds, "Well, I don't know about you, but those men only recognize me by my face." A wife decides to treat her husband, Dave, to a night at an adult club for his birthday. Upon arriving, the doorman greets them with a casual, "Hey, Dave, how you doing?" This puzzles the wife, who questions whether he's been to the club before. Dave reassures her, saying, "Oh no, he's on my bowling team." As they settle into their seats, a waitress approaches and asks Dave if he'd like his usual, bringing over a Budweiser. The wife becomes increasingly uneasy and asks, "How did she know you drink Budweiser?" Dave explains, "She's in the ladies' bowling league, honey. We share lanes with them." Just then a performer comes over, wraps her arms around Dave, and says, "Hi, Davey. Want your usual dance?" Furious, Dave's wife grabs her purse and storms out of the club. Dave follows and catches her getting into a cab. Despite his desperate attempts to explain the misunderstanding, his wife is unreceptive, screaming at him and hurling every name in the book. The cab driver turns and remarks, "Geez, Dave, looks like you picked up a real feisty one." A large number of viewers watch my videos without a subscription. Therefore, subscribe to my channel so as not to miss new videos with funny jokes. In a charming part of town lies a unique establishment that caters to a distinctive crowd and showcases an array of peculiar items, their purposes appearing rather unusual to outsiders but well understood by the regular patrons. Within this establishment, several small enclosures or booths are arranged in pairs, each pair separated by a shared wall. Interestingly, a hole, approximately the size of an average adult's fist, is present in this shared wall. On a particular occasion, a youthful and attractive lady enters this establishment, anxiously scanning the room, fervently hoping that no familiar faces catch sight of her. Quietly, she slips into one of these booths. On the opposite side of the shared wall, adjacent to her booth, sits an elderly man. His age has granted him experience, and he is accustomed to such rendezvous. After closing the door behind her, the young woman finds herself enveloped in apprehension. To initiate the encounter, she leans toward the hole in the shared wall and with hesitant whispers says, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I've been a very, very naughty girl." Softly, the elderly man whispers back through the wall, "You definitely got the right spirit, dear, but the correct phrase is, 'Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned.'" Each night, following dinner, Harry had a habitual routine that caused some tension in his household. He would leave home to unwind at the local bar, which he considered his nightly retreat. There, he immersed himself in the lively atmosphere, often indulging in more drinks than he could handle. Predictably, he would return home around midnight, usually in a state of heavy inebriation. Upon his arrival, Harry struggled clumsily to fit his key into the keyhole, his coordination impaired by his drunken state. His wife, accustomed to this routine, would hear the jingling of keys and his attempts to open the door. Night after night, she would go to the door, let him in, and then the night would take a sour turn. Expressing her frustration and anger, she scolded him for his constant nights out and habitual return in a drunken state. Despite her complaints, Harry persisted with his nightly escapades. One day, feeling quite distressed, Harry's wife confided in a friend about her husband's behavior. The friend listened attentively and offered a piece of advice. You should treat him a little differently when he comes home. Instead of berating him, why don't you give him some loving words and welcome him home with a kiss? Maybe then he might change his ways." Pondering over this suggestion, the wife thought it might be worth a try. That night, as usual, Harry left for the bar after dinner. Around midnight, he returned inebriated, as typical. However, this time his wife reacted differently. Hearing him struggle at the door, she quickly went to open it for him. Instead of greeting him with anger and frustration, she gently took his arm, led him into the living room, and made him comfortable in a chair. Carefully removing his shoes, she put his feet up on a footstool and began to affectionately cuddle him from behind. After a short while, she whispered softly, "It's pretty late, dear. I think we should go upstairs to bed now." Still in his drunken haze, Harry replied with slurred speech, "Heck, I guess we might as well. I'll get in trouble when I get home anyway." Two close friends, both recently divorced, decided to make a pact to completely avoid women. They chose to move to a remote part of Alaska, embracing a life of isolation far north to ensure they wouldn't encounter any women. Upon reaching Alaska, they visited a local trader shop with the intention of buying enough supplies to sustain them for an entire year in the wilderness. As they finalized their purchase, they noticed something unusual. The trader, while packing their supplies, placed a wooden board on top of each pile. Each board had a peculiar feature, a hole in the middle with fur surrounding it. Puzzled, the friends inquired about the purpose of these boards. The trader explained that where they were headed, the chances of meeting women were next to none, and these boards might come in handy for certain needs. Despite their adamant decision to avoid any romantic or physical relationships, the friends declared, "No way! We've completely sworn off women for life." Understanding their resolve, but still cautious, the trader suggested, "Well, take the boards with you anyway. If you find that you don't use them, I'll be happy to give you a refund when you come back next year." Reluctantly, the friends agreed to take the boards along, not intending to use them. A year passed, and one of the friends returned to the trader's store alone, requesting enough supplies for one person for a year. The trader, recognizing him from the previous year, asked about his companion, saying, "Weren't you in here last year with a partner?" The man replied, "Yes." And curious about the fate of the other friend, the trader inquired, "Where is he now?" With a somber tone, the man confessed, "I killed him." The trader urgently asked, "Why on earth did you do that?" The man responded, "I caught him in bed with my board." In the quiet depths of the night, beneath a barely noticeable moon, obscured by the cloudy sky, a taxi pulled up at the airport's curb. Its headlights pierced the darkness as a lone traveler emerged from the airport terminal. The weary traveler, a man of average build, settled into the back seat of the cab, his briefcase resting on his lap. He had just returned home from a business trip a full day earlier than expected, and a whirlwind of emotions stirred within him. He felt a blend of travel fatigue and a stronger, more profound emotion: suspicion. The taxi driver initiated the meter and inquired through the rearview mirror, "Where to, buddy?" The man provided his address. But then, as the city lights faded behind them, he found himself confiding more in the cabbie than he had intended. He spoke of his suspicions that his wife, the woman with whom he had shared many years of his life, might be involved in an affair. As they approached the familiar streets of his neighborhood, a plan began to take shape in the man's mind. He turned to the cab driver and made a request. "I need a witness. I'm going to confront her tonight. I have to know if my suspicions are true. Will you come in with me as my witness? I'll pay you $100." His voice barely rose above a whisper. The cab driver nodded, steering the taxi into the shadowy driveway. "You've got yourself a deal," he replied. Together, they ventured toward the house, cautious and quiet, their footsteps almost inaudible. With each step, the husband's heart thudded like thunder in his ears. Upon reaching the bedroom, he took a deep breath, bracing himself for the potential revelation. He flicked on the lights and pulled back the blankets on the bed, revealing the scene he had feared all along. His wife, the woman he had loved and trusted, entangled with another man. Blinded by a mix of hurt and anger, the husband stumbled toward the closet, retrieving his shotgun. However, amidst the tumult of his emotions, he heard his wife's voice breaking through, filled with fear. She began to plead with him. She admitted to deceit, not just regarding her heart, but also their finances. She confessed that she hadn't inherited the wealth she had led him to believe. Instead, their lavish lifestyle, the extravagant gifts she had given him, the sports car, the cabin cruiser, the lakeside property, and even the exclusive country club membership were all funded by the generosity of the stranger in their bed. Each revelation landed on the husband like a physical blow, leaving him bewildered. The world he had known crumbled around him, replaced by a web of lies and betrayal. His grip on the shotgun loosened as he grappled with the overwhelming information. Lost in a whirlwind of confusion, he turned to the only other person in the room who hadn't been part of the betrayal. The cab driver. Catching the husband's inquisitive gaze, the cab driver, a witness to life's harsh realities, responded, "I'd suggest covering him up with that blanket before he catches a cold."